It's time to talk music, audio gear, and anything else that crosses our minds. I'm Mark.
And I'm Peter.
And welcome to the Hurton Audio Podcast. So, Justice is back, and they've got a brand new track called... Hang on, I've lost it on Spotify. Called One Night, All Night, featuring Tame Impala. And Tame Impala is getting around at the moment.
He's getting
on
around.
So the reason why we're so excited for Justice is because Justice, which is a French duo, very not similar to Daft Punk, but almost adjacent to Daft Punk in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they've run parallel.
Yeah.
I would describe with Daft Punk. So yeah, they're not necessarily doing the same stuff, but they're definitely, you can draw a comparison to them with them both being duos, both working in the electronic stroke, sort of French touch. I would definitely say way.
Yeah, so they have announced a new album called Hyperdrama, which is the first new LP in nearly 8 years, according to Pitchfork there. And what's interesting with Hyperdrama is there's sort of like, I'm not going to say a vacuum, but with Daft Punk out the equation, it puts Justice in a very interesting place.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of French house stroke French touch / sort of French representation in dance music. Like the French, when you think about people like Madian, David Guetta, obviously you have Daft Punk, Justice, you know, that's just to name ones off the top of my head, and there'll be loads more. You know, they do things a bit differently, and that's why everybody loves it, because all the guys that I've just named are just, they make the craziest sounding dance music.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
And it's not necessarily crazy in a Skrillex way or in like a, you know, like we think something like Fisher, I'm losing it. You know, it's not like a immediate shock factor that they go for, you know. It's more of it's very nuanced. It's quite complicated a lot of the time, but it's almost always super groovy.
Yeah, groovy is the word. It's about, I mean, Justice are like, they're almost like the dark sort of version of Daft Punk musically in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You think of Daft Punk when you think about very like euphoric party music, like, and then with Random Access Memories, they sort of went into that sort of like disco stuff that is all synonymous with their brand. It sort of fit them very well. What Justice have like a dark element to their music that's very not atonal, but very brooding.
Yeah, and then with audio video disco, they sort of explored like rock concepts within the context of dance music. Like songs like New Lands have like almost a AC/DC-ish feel to them, even though the track is very electronic at its heart.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting comparison, because that, even if you just take them two forks in the road in their catalogues, where obviously Daft Punk goes like disco and funky and cinematic, Justice are going rock and like edgy, you know, cinematic in the complete other direction.
Which they are doing 2 years before Get Lucky comes out as well, which is interesting because obviously they're not copying Daft Punk because they didn't do it first, but they was already on different trajectories. It's not like they could look at the success of Random Access Memories and then say, as a dance artist, we can do that. They was already doing
they
something
did it before
completely
Daft Punk.
Different. Yeah. So it's very interesting, particularly like when you think about how a lot of people sort of group them together, because there is a lot of similarities. But the thing that I absolutely love about Justice is they have some very, very sort of acid-inspired TB303 sort of like grooves that go along with their like French house with the disco element. So there's a lot going on to unpack. There's the disco element. There's like the modern electronic music element. But then you have all this like acid filtered sort of synths and stuff that bring like an element of techno to Justice's music, and you put the three together and it works really well. And I always think that the sort of TB303 acid style of bass, you know, it's about, but I feel like in sort of more poppy records, it isn't used as much as it could be, and it isn't used in necessarily a cool, groovy way.
Yeah, it can be very uncommon to hear it like in that context, I mean, River by Miley Cyrus is one of the only pop songs I can think of from last year that actually utilised a acid influenced TB3-esque part.
Yeah.
That's one of the only big pop songs that I can think, and I'm not talking about the dance songs that'll do it. I'm just saying like in the pure pop sphere.
Yeah,
that was one of the main ones.
And like say on tracks like Safe and Sound on the Woman Worldwide version, you just almost get a TB303 breakdown. That's like the bit. It's not like, like in metal it would be a guitar riff, but in this it's like a super filtered, super crunchy TB303, and that's one of the things I just really like about.
And we did
Justice's
notice when we
music.
watched the cinematic concert.
Yes.
That they've recently put on YouTube, so I would check out YouTube's. I would check out Justice's YouTube channel because, find the name. I always forget what the name is because it was a limited sort of release. I think it might have been in cinemas at first, but it was only on Blu-ray for like a couple of years, and then I think because they're ramping up. Yes, it's called Iris, and Iris: A Space Opera by Justice. Look that up on YouTube because the lighting work and the actual camera work on it is phenomenal. Like, it's a real experience. But then they're doing this full live set at the same time, and it's basically Woman Worldwide in its entirety for essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely playing off the type of sort of sound set they was using, with like it being like an full extended jams of a lot of the songs. Like a lot of the songs on Woman Worldwide are like 7.5 minutes long, so they're very like open-ended jams where they're just vibing from the sound of it, and it has like a live concert feel, in the same way really that Alive 2007 has by Daft Punk. It's that sort of energy.
We're going to constantly be trying to find a Daft Punk comparison, even though we're trying to distance Justice from Daft Punk. In our heads, we're like, what's the Daft Punk equivalent?
No, but that is like, it's when you're looking, because there's not a lot of albums that sound like Alive by Daft Punk.
Yeah.
It has a very particular set of things going on, and you can't really find it. I mean, a lot of Daft Punk fans swear by that as being the thing to listen to, because that is like an unfiltered, unlike sort of commercialized version of what Daft Punk were doing.
Yeah.
The reason I draw that comparison is because of how extended it is. And that's the main thing. It's about arrangement more than anything else. It's that the tracks have time to just breathe, and the loops maybe last a minute longer than you would typically do on a record. And in that sense, that's why I think they're very similar.
Yes,
from like a listening point of view, whether melodically it's similar or not. But what Iris does is it just has an impeccable light show, but it's also very thematic with what Justice's visual style is in all their album covers.
Yeah, it's worth watching. I'll tell you that. I wish I watched it when it came out, but because they put it on YouTube, it's astounding. It really makes you think, because, a lot of people use LED wall paneling and stuff.
Yeah.
This isn't that. I mean, they play with that. Definitely it's there, but it's not relying on that. They're not relying on, videos playing in the background. They're sort of trying to show you a tech demo of what you can do with like parkans and strobes and like LEDs, but in a tradition, like an old school traditional light manner.
Yeah, it has a very
I was struggling through that one.
It has a very, like, Justice's full vibe is like very, I don't want to say VHS, but it has like an old school, it's very vintage.
It's got a retro feel to it.
They constantly utilize things like old tech in like the videos. They'll be in like 70s looking studios. There won't be modern places. They'll have like the brown countertops and all this vintage furniture.
They're the sort of duo that are constantly referencing to existing works, and they're sort of saying, look, if you don't get it, maybe, like visually, that's what I get. If you don't get it, maybe you need to read up on the source material, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a bit like how a lot of the there's a lot of classic rock references in a lot of rock music. You know, like when they're doing a spoof, like a satire. Like if you don't know who Van Halen is, when somebody rips into a Van Halen-esque solo, it can be just sort of lost on you the reason why they're doing it.
Yeah, and this is where like understanding, like I suppose the musicology history side of different genres really comes into play, because it's satisfying when you understand what somebody's referencing.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you watch Spinal Tap and you don't know anything about classic rock, you're just not going to get it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's that type
That's
of thing.
what I'm saying. So I'm saying if you are into what Justice are into in that retro vibe, but I feel like the stage design is very minimalist, but maximizing minimalism. And I feel like they do that a lot with the music as well.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about a song like New Lands, it sounds very, very sparse in places, but it's hitting all the notes that it needs to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and like even when you think about the drums on New Lands, it's not like slamming 808s on the drums. It sounds like it almost sounds like it could be a drummer playing it. I think it isn't, but it has the illusion that it could be.
It has a sampled sound to it.
Yeah.
Like somebody's built it on an MPC. Like they've sampled like acoustic drums, but then done them through an MPC in order to get the best of both worlds. That's what I feel like it sounds like from listening.
It doesn't sound like, it's not like and I hate to bring up Daft Punk, I really do, but it's not like Contact's drums.
No,
do you know what I mean? It's not different. It doesn't have that full live feel. It has like, it's sort of like a mixture of two, but like I say, it's not, even though they've gone for like guitar based stuff, it's not like they've put like a slamming kick and a Prada snare in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's very much leaning towards it sounding thematically
and that's
correct.
where I think we need to get ourselves back on track and talk about Justice's new song, in that it is not something that is conforming to a slap house trend or trance trend. It is Justice doing Justice, doing that French touch-esque sort of infused thing, because I'm not sure how much Justice is classified as French touch, but they've got that in there, you know, that element.
100%.
In the way the sort of grooves and the beats actually come together.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you really think about it, like, say, Dance, the Woman Worldwide version, before the song's even started, you've got these lush, like, keyboards, and you've got a plucked guitar, and that immediately sends you towards the French touch sound. You put a slight like phaser or filter or whatever the thing they always do.
I think they tend to use like a really deep phaser, a chewy sounding phaser, maybe 8-stage.
You put that on, and then your brain's thinking French house, French touch, all that type of stuff. And that's where like the disco violins come in with dance music.
Yes.
That's like one of the staples of those types of songs, because a lot of them sampled disco acts, and that's why they're there, you know, in the first place, is from the sampling element of disco. But then what you do is you go, well, I associate this type of music with that, so let's, on this original song, get a string quartet to do those disco sort of violin runs, which then, you know, perpetuates it being an element of that genre.
Because it's association.
Yeah.
It makes you immediately, again, this is what we're talking about, making nods and making specific references to things in the music to say, this is supposed to bring you to a place in, you know, in time.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing consciously. You know, it's not like just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what works. Everything seems very well crafted, and like, you know, there's more to it if you get it. And I think it's hard with music, because it's hard if you haven't really delved much into some of these acts, or some of the, you know, like you say, Matt, the musicology of things. Musicology is something that I don't think your average listener really perceives.
No, and it's like a lot of people just hear a song, they don't think, well, they've took those strings out of a disco song, and they've took that guitar out of a yacht rock song, and they've smashed it all together with brand new, well, I say brand new, with like, you know, late 90s electronic dance production, and then 2000s DAW recording, and all that smashed together is what this song sounds like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of people just listen to music and go, I like that song, you know, because you're not thinking about it any deeper than the surface level, you know. But that's what a band like Justice does really well, if you're really thinking about, if you're trying to take apart the music in your head.
Yeah, once you start dissecting it, you can spot all these very clever, nuanced, and nuanced things. But also, as I was going to say, I was going to interrupt myself. It's all very original still. Like, I'm not trying to say Justice is making a collage of other people's work.
Oh, no.
It's about tastefully collating elements to sort of make them into a new composition, but that is evocative of existing works, which I think that's what a lot of artists want to do, but it can be really, really hard to get right, because all you have to do is have the strings sound not like 70s strings. If you have strings and they just sound very, very, crisp and cold in that way,
Yeah.
A lot of people are trying to get the exact same character in these instruments when they are making nods to things. It's like you say, Mark, about the phaser on the guitar. It's such a specific type of phaser sound when you hear it. Like it's like Luther Vandross's stuff. What's the song?
Oh, I can't
Too much.
You carry on talking. Let me look.
Luther Vandross is a great one. I didn't really notice that song. I wasn't aware of that song till I replayed Vice City in the remaster and it's on the soundtrack. Never Too Much. Knew it was too much something. Never Too Much. That song has these phaser guitars and this infectious groove that really, really, when you listen to it in retrospect, you can think, whoa, I can hear all these songs that are probably influenced by this sort of music.
Yeah.
That I didn't, because I'd never heard the original work. You cannot deduct what has come after it and what is not into it, is what I mean in this musicology thing. And, not everybody wants to or even cares why things are the way they are. But if you are that way inclined, it can be really fascinating to keep going. I mean, this is what everybody on every documentary says when they talk about music, is they're like, well, what did he listen to? Or what did she listen to? And how did they get there? Like, and you can always trace it back to the 1930s with a lot of the acts. Because you're listening to somebody who liked, say, Van Halen. Say Van Halen liked Eric Clapton. Clapton likes Buddy Guy and Buddy Guy.
The blues guys.
Exactly. You always end up back to, what is it, Robert Johnson?
Yeah.
Basically.
Essentially Robert Johnson,
because, there's a lot more music now than there was.
Yes.
Or at least in recorded history.
Most of the time in most documentaries, particularly when we're talking about guitar-based music or anything derived even remotely from riff or guitar-based music, it tends to end up as at the Beatles, Elvis, or Robert Johnson, or somebody like that.
Yeah.
If it doesn't end up at one of them, it ends up as like a songwriting crooner or country guitarist, do you know what I mean?
Like Nat King Cole or Bing Crosby or somebody like that.
You end up in a very similar place in most documentaries, that it all went back to this one person, or this group of people in the 30s or whatever. But like I say, I know we're going on lots of different tangents here, but what we've got is we're listening to Justice and we're also looking at Iris on YouTube, just a light show.
Which is just impeccable. I cannot recommend it enough. If you're interested in lighting and stage design, this is a masterclass.
And it's also very distracting because you want to just look at it, because the light show, the way they play with your expectations, and they only have... They have a lot on stage, but they also have a little on stage for what you could have. They have just a few LED Marshall stacks, loads of lights, and then some floating sort of LED strip lights that are all rotating around in squares. And then you have the actual platform that Justice has stood on, and you can actually see all of the gear they're using on this.
This is something I was going to say when we talk about the souped-up TB sounds. Interestingly enough, they are using, at least it appeared so, for that solo in Safe and Sound, A Woman Worldwide, a Roland TB3. Not a 303 or a boutique or anything. The actual Air Range TB3, which often gets clowned on.
Yes.
There's been a very recent bad gear about it, even though it's one of his favourite sort of bass machines. But it is interesting to actually see it, because you can't miss it, because it's got that giant red...
bright
green,
red panel.
Touch strip. So, it's interesting when you think about souped up sort of bass machines, and it actually is a new souped up bass machine, you know.
Which is very interesting because aesthetically, you would imagine Justice would have a original. I mean, I think they do.
I think there is one on there.
I'm sure there is. I think there's about 4 or 5 TB303-esque elements. There's like Moogs and all sorts, but you can really just see it. You can literally pause the video and you can practically read the units of what they've got when the lights aren't strobing you out. You know, if you can find the right frame, you can see exactly what they're using.
Yeah.
Which is really nice because I think a lot of the time, a lot of electronic producers are in a position where all you see is some CDJs and you have no idea what they're using. Like Disclosure comes to mind of having all of their machines and drum pads and stuff on there, like a full electronic
show,
rig.
yeah, so you can see.
But for the most part, with these types of acts, you are looking at like a podium, and if they have got anything on stage, it tends to be inside this massive podium that you can't see. Whereas with this Iris movie, they've got no board or anything in front of them, no podium.
There's not like
you can see exactly where they stood, and you can see exactly what's on every table. It's not like trapped inside a big like sort of castle-side stage rig.
There's some top-down shots as well, where if you get the right angle, you could just pause it and zoom in. And like I say, that TB3, you can see a mile off because of that light up red and green touchpad.
Yeah. But yeah, Justice are just a very cool duo and artist. And I do feel like I'm interested to see what they do.
I was just about to say, what do we think they're going to do?
I really want them to do a little bit of stuff they haven't sort of dipped their toes into, but I also want them to do some stuff that's very Woman Worldwide like, because I really like when Justice, like we've been saying, they push the TB3 acid element and sort of riffs as far as they can, and I just think that they do it almost better than anybody else.
Yeah. I think we will see a lot of collaborations. We've been saying that The Weeknd's been teasing stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, he's been posting about Justice.
A lot.
I saw him literally post Justice's logo onto his Instagram stories, and I was like, what's he up to?
I feel like there's something's going to be there.
At that point, I wasn't aware that Justice was making new music as well. So then I immediately looked at Justice and I was like, oh no, they've got new tracks coming out. And then you go, wow. So they're definitely, I'd be very surprised if there wasn't a Justice and Weeknd collaboration, because they're both teased to release albums this year.
Yes.
So it could be Justice on the Weeknd song, which would be far more likely. But
I would feel so. I would feel like
you'd feel like Justice would want it to be on there, but it's hard because, you know, you don't know the temperament of some of these guys. Justice's documentary, I can't remember which documentary we watched, but that was very unhinged.
It was very unhinged. It might be on, if you scroll Spotify, you might be able to find the album that comes with it. But yeah, I got really, really, really into Justice. And because I not really heard a lot by them. And then it's that one. Is it Across the Universe?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Across the
Universe. I think it's Across the Universe.
Yeah, that is an unhinged. If you can find the CD DVD version, there is a documentary in there that is crazy. It's a mess, but it gives you a lot of insights.
And they get arrested at the end. Or
it looks like
they get arrested.
There's some weird stuff happening, and I couldn't make up my mind whether it was satire, whether it was staged, whether it was
real.
Real. It was very difficult. It felt very real, very DIY, almost like reality.
Yeah.
But then the way that the events that happen in it, you're like, I mean, maybe it's poking fun at reality and the culture of what these DJs are supposed to be doing. I have no idea. But it was interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But that was like one of the first like impressions I had from Justice, because I got into them quite a lot. And then I watched that and I was like, whoa, what's going on with these guys? And then I listened to them more and they brought out Woman Worldwide. And that was like yes, this is amazing.
I think Woman Worldwide is the perfect introduction album to listen to if you've never heard Justice, because they're picking lots of different songs off lots of different albums, almost essentially like a greatest hits remixed
DJ set as well, because it is a continuous DJ set.
Yeah.
So you can just put it on if you're like partying or warming up for something. Just put that on and just let it. It's a wild ride. It's Woman Worldwide, and I would recommend it to anybody who likes house, French house, sort of dance, anything like that. Yeah.
So we're thinking some collaborations. We're thinking some acid brutalization, and we're thinking.
I think they should get Thomas Bangalter on a song, and then trick Guy Hom Emmanuel, whatever his name is, if I'm getting it right, to feature on the same song without letting them know.
Oh,
and
you
then
imagine?
say it's Justice featuring Daft Punk.
If anybody had the goal to pull that off, I'm sure Daft Punk would sue them. Probably the label would be like, "Great job, guys."
Yeah,
the label would be
Warner
like,
Music's just like doing the handshake.
Yeah.
Is it Warner that they're on? They're just
Columbia.
like, anything, mate. Just lie to them.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people in suits dying for Daft Punk to do something that they can even try to release.
I have no idea what the history of whether Justice and Daft Punk know each other, whether they're happy with each other, whether they hate each other's guts. I have no idea on that, but just what a thought that would be. And number one, Justice and Daft Punk together, that would be insane in itself.
Well, that would be incredibly viral content.
Also, Madian could. I mean, are the French going to stick together? Are they going to work together, Mark? Are we going to get like Madian on this thing or something?
It's hard because there's a lot of these artists don't really collaborate very much.
Doesn't feel like it.
And they do. We're obviously seeing featurings on with Tame Impala and stuff already, so we can tell that they are collaborating. But like even with Random Access Memories, there was a lot of collaborators, but it still feels very much like. I mean, but then again, I suppose
they're collaborating with people outside of their world. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
not like David Guetta collaborating with Calvin Harris. That's not what these guys tend to do.
No, they tend to find.
They tend to be like getting singers and bands and people that they look up to.
Yeah.
So, which is it's good. It's good, but I would love to hear what would happen if you had two powerhouse, like legendary DJ duos do a song together. I know Daft Punk's split up, but it's still that you can dream.
Yeah, we said we was going to be on Daft Punk a lot whilst we're talking about Justice, but I feel like that's just inevitable, particularly for our experience of electronic music, because I think I've always put them together in my mind as if you're in the mood to listen to Justice, you're in the mood to listen to Daft Punk. Not because they sound the same, but just because they evoke a similar sort of thing.
Wheelhouse.
It's like listening to Foreigner after listening to Boston. It's just the same area, the same sort of like time frame, similar genre, similar type of band. So you just sort of, I mean, everybody, this is a full problem with music, right? Is music, people want to be genreless, and as soon as somebody hears two songs and go, those sound similar, put them in a playlist.
Yeah.
And then you just can't get away from the idea of genreless music. And then, of course, all the labels are like, we want things to be in the category. Spotify's like, what playlist can we put this in?
I find the genreless argument really tough because, like you say, they do want that. People keep saying, well, we need to be genreless. And then people go, well, what playlist does it go in? And they're looking at like, Good Morning playlist.
Yeah.
Because it can't go and rock this if it isn't a rock song.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to get your head round. And I think the idea is, well, no, I can be this. I can be a dance act and do a rock song if I want. Or I can be a rock artist and do a dubstep song if I want. I'm not saying that there's any problem with that. But that isn't being genreless. That's just doing multiple genres.
Yeah.
The idea of being truly genreless is somebody listens to it and they cannot really say what it is they're listening to.
And that's also very difficult to do because you'd have to then try and put yourself into the mindset where you've never listened to music and you've made music. But then you'd say, have you managed to do something completely original in a void of creativity?
Probably not.
It's very difficult because then the first thing you're going to play is going to be one of the simplest songs written and somebody's going to say, well, that sounds a bit like this. Because like you say, it's so hard with music. I mean, for me, music is sound design. And then that's where these guys come in, like Justice, and they make music incredibly interesting because you're not even listening to what the notes are.
Yeah, the notes don't even matter at a certain point.
You're listening to what the song sounds like sound effects wise. You're not listening. I think the good thing with a lot of electronic music is you're not really listening to it like what notes are they playing. You're listening to it like, but what have they done?
Yeah, what's happening and how are them notes actually interacting, especially when you start getting into glides and the glissando and stuff like that of things where things aren't just playing notes, they're sliding around and being re-triggered and and all this stuff, you know, that's what makes some of this music so interesting, because yes, an orchestra can do glissando and everything like that, but it's not the point. Like, it's music like this, like Justice, can't be played by an orchestra, realistically.
And even if it was, it wouldn't have any of the same interesting hallmarks about it. It's like chopped up samples and just impacts. And yes, you can hit a timpani drum on an impact, but it's not the same, is it, as what they can do. It's the way they do scattered, sort of like sped up, chopped up samples in electronic music is very hard to translate into like any kind of formal music. Do you know what I mean? Because you can, in theory, go, well, on a MIDI roll, this would be that at this pitch, but it's not about that when you're looking at sampling in general. You know, like for a lot of these, for a lot of people in general, it's about the way it sounds and not what it's doing, you know?
Yeah. And I would say, what albums are you excited about hearing this year? I know there's a lot been teased, and we're looking forward to seeing if Justice actually does work with The Weeknd.
And I'm also very interested to actually see what The Weeknd is doing with this trilogy, but that's an episode for another day. Thanks for listening, everybody.